Welcome to the What Happens Next YouTube channel. What we're aiming to do with this channel is share content designed to make sure that you're supported through whatever's next in your life. And we'd love to continue to do that. I've got a favour to ask today, and what I'd ask you to do is just subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it really helps us deliver really good quality content on a consistent basis. Thank you, and let's go on to the interview. Hello and welcome to What Happens Next, the channel dedicated to having really nuanced conversations about the change we typically go through in our 50s, 60s and beyond when we want to get a bit more balance and in our lives and think about how we spend our time meaningfully. I'm really excited to have Geoff here today, because I think knowing Geoff and knowing the value he adds is going to be a really meaningful conversation about navigating change and the sort of things you want to think about when you're thinking about a life well lived. Geoff, how are you today, mate?
Well, Chris, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you again. Whenever I bump into you at meetings, etc., we have such wonderful conversations. So, thank you for this opportunity this morning. And I'm good. And as you introduced me there, I just thought, do you know what? My life has always been all about change, and it's very interesting that the work I've ended up doing is all about helping people through changes in life, and we can either let life change us, or we can have a little bit of a say in how we change life. And I prefer the second option.
Yeah, no, exactly. And actually, I think, interestingly, the work we do with the clients is often at a point where they're taking ownership of their own financial situation and saying, I want clarity in terms of what I can do. But as we know, Geoff, it's not all about the money. It's also about the elements of how you spend your time and what you want to do with your life moving into this next chapter. So that's why I'm really excited to talk to you about it. So I know all about you. As you say, we always have really fun conversations when we get together. But for the benefit of our audience, tell us a little bit about you, mate.
So, a very short sort of career history is that I've been a teacher. I came out of university and was a teacher for a little while. I got chosen to play professional football. I had a terrible injury that stopped that career in its infancy. I went into business and ran a very successful digital print business for 20 years.
Yeah.
I then went into property. But the underlying theme of my life, if I can look back and go, what's been the real passion, what's been the real purpose, personal growth, self-development, transformative coaching has been, and learning lots of different methods of how we can go about facilitating change. That's been the love of my life. That's been my journey. And so now, I'm devoted to coaching other people, giving them the benefit of my experience. And I try to be humble. I'm not holding myself up to be this epitome of how to live a life, but I'm a really good reminder of what people already know and should be doing, but they know they're not doing.
And where does that gap normally manifest itself? That gap between, well, I sort of know I should be doing that, but I'm not.
Yeah, there's other people's noise. A lot of people come to me and they're confused. There's a lot of conflicting advice out there in the marketplace. Yeah. We can rejoice that we're living in times where we have more information about how to transform your life than ever before. The podcasts are out there, the lectures, the books, so isn't that wonderful that we've got a resource that my parents certainly never had? Yeah. They would never dream of looking at, how can I live a better life?
We're having conversations about it, but as you say, there's a paradox isn't there? Because sometimes the noise is often overwhelming.
Yeah, yes. So it's, which philosophy do I follow? Do I follow this philosophy or that philosophy or this technique or this tip? And my job primarily is to bring people back to what I believe is a universal law, that each human being, we have all the wisdom within ourselves to live our best lives. So we have to cut out the noise. We have to come back to looking inside. And, not only is it the podcasts and the other people and the new systems that come out, it's our parental upbringing. There is noise that still lurks in the back of our heads of my mom said this or my dad said this. And, they'll have said it out of love. They'll have said it out of caring, but it wasn't always the truth that we needed to hear.
Yeah.
So my job is to remove that if it's having a negative effect.
I'm really, I've been really thinking recently about the concept of the stories we tell ourselves that serve us. And often, sometimes I think about this, I think about the stories we tell ourselves are often to protect us, but often hold us back. What do you think of that as a concept?
One of the things that I have to tell my clients is the mind tells lies. The mind lies. So, I will get people who want to start a business, say, and then the mind intervenes. So before the mind intervenes, there'll be an excitement. I've got an idea for a new business. I want to start this new business. And within themselves, there's an excitement. There's a self-inspiration of, I'm going to do this. This is my new direction in life. Yeah. And then the mind intervenes and tells lies. Yeah, you might fail. You might fall flat on your face. Everybody might laugh at you. There might not be a marketplace for what you're doing. Where are you going to pitch your, all these questions. But what I ask my clients to do is ask your mind for the proof. Where's the proof you're going to fail? Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence that there isn't a marketplace? Do your due diligence, obviously, and there might not be a marketplace. Then pivot and change. But the mind is constantly, and we know why. It's like our parent. It's trying to protect us.
Yeah.
But my job is to empower a person to say, okay, tell the mind to shut up, get clear, or even just question. I'm a great believer in not only coaching, but journaling. Put it down on paper, look at that. Is it a lie or is it the truth?
We this is just for anybody who doesn't know, this is tape. Well, nobody will know because we didn't eventually record the first interview, but we spoke about journaling when we first initially spoke on What Happens Next, Geoff. And I think the reality for me was that element of being, it's really weird. I like to write. The written books, and I like to write. Often for myself, writing's all about being honest with myself, because I find myself, when I write something down, it's about just having it out there on somewhere independent, so that actually I can view that, whether that's true to me or not. And it's a weird experience, journaling, isn't it? Because it's not just about putting pen to paper, it's the intellectual process you go through when you journal. What do you think about that as a concept?
I've actually created a journaling course, an online journaling course for people, because when I was suggesting that people journal, they were kind of going, well, what do I journal about? What? And it ended up either a diary or a to-do list.
Yeah.
And I'm a great believer in intentional journaling. Okay. Yeah. By intentional journaling, what I mean is if there are things that are holding you back in life, start to examine what those are. Is it fear? Is it
Yeah.
fear? So where does that fear come from? You
Yeah.
know, is it even your fear? It could be not your fear. It could be the fear of your parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could have been that, again, not by any bad means. The parents want to look out for their children, so they're saying, "Take care, be careful. Ooh, don't do anything that might get you into trouble." Da, 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 da. And these are deep rooted. Um, it's difficult to journal if you don't know which questions to ask yourself, and that was the impetus that said, I need to give people the questions they should be asking themselves and doing that self-reflection.
And clearly, if people want to learn how to do that, they can take a look at the course. But what's your top 3 questions that everybody should consider asking themselves when they start to journal?
So I have. I'll tell you 3 of the different modules to give you an idea of 3 of the most important things I think you should do. So I think, the personal growth industry used to all be about positive affirmations and saying positive things to you in the morning. Okay. I'm a believer in affirmations. I'm a believer in saying positive things to yourself. But if you look into the mirror and say to yourself, I'm happy, successful, and wealthy, and you're not,
Yeah.
there's a disconnect. There's a conflict that ends up in your head. Okay. So I'm a great believer in before you can do anything positively, you have to remove the negative. So the first thing, the first question of the 3 things that you mentioned there, the first thing is, how am I feeling right now? And if you're feeling sad, depressed, angry, frustrated, you can journal out that negative feeling.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, it's like an athlete preparing for a race or a singer preparing for a performance. I do this every morning, and it's my warm up. I want to perform at peak every day. Now,
Yeah.
I don't always do it. We don't always do it. But if I warm up at the start of the day for as little as 5 or 10 minutes, and if I rid myself of that negative feeling, I'm going to have a better day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% with you, and Geoff, because what's interesting is that element of there was a growing, uh, as you say, advice that was all about positive mental attitude. And the challenge with that, I think, is often when it's just stay positive, we ignore the fact that negative emotions often are natural. They happen, and to ignore them is probably unhelpful and unhealthy. But as you say, put them outside of yourself and somewhere in writing is really useful. So what am I feeling now is a great question. What's question 2?
If you don't mind, can I just pick up on what you said there? Because what you said there is, and I'll go on to number 2. I won't forget your question. But you see, people think that thinking, I think a core need for human beings is to create.
Yeah.
Create, and that doesn't mean we have to be Picasso or we create. You create your business, I create my business. Our pleasure and our fulfillment comes from creation. But the thing is, many people think that thinking equals creation, and I think thinking is just part of the process.
I agree.
We need to think. We need to express via journaling, and then we need to act. And to me, those are the 3 core components of creation.
Yeah, 100%.
Thought, express, act.
But it's so interesting, isn't it? I've been thinking about this concept quite a lot. In a world where there is so much noise, there is a tendency to just consume more. And the reality is, you can go in a bit of a flywheel of turning around and going, I just need to learn and understand more. I had a great quote, and I'm not sure I 1,000,000% agree with it, but I think it's interesting. And it was from a personal development guy, a guy called Mark Manson, who does some really good stuff. And he talks about this concept of reading books, reading personal development or self-development books, and how often reading books is a smart person's way to procrastinate, particularly if they don't take any action based on what they learn. And it's the point you raise, isn't it? It's that element of turning around and going, if I'm consuming, but not actually making positive movement by creating in my life, I'm actually learning more, maybe, but not applying it to my life practically.
Oh, again, I have a great belief in this, in that, undoubtedly, reading books and expanding your horizons through other means is useful. Is very useful indeed, and very useful. But I must admit, there was a time in my life where I had to stand back and almost stop consuming information, and I have this saying that I believe our minds should be a paintbrush, not a filing cabinet.
Yeah, interesting. I love
Don't
that.
just keep filling it. And the trouble is, you see many people getting into that habit of, oh, I won't start that business until I've read these books or been on that course or learned enough. And the number of clients who come to me with 10, 11, 12, 13 online courses in their inbox that they've never opened, or they've done the introduction, they buy course after course. I just need one more course before I get started. No, the learning is in the action of starting.
But here's the interesting thing. It's in my world and the world of people who are thinking about the next chapter of their life, I've had conversations where people say to me, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
And my response to that is, you're never going to be ready. You're like the idea of a perfect time is a fallacy, isn't it? There's no perfect time. You just and again, it's as if you're unhappy in your current environment. If you are enjoying it and you're having a good time. But I remember having a conversation with a client a couple of years ago now, and we were talking about the fact that he was really, really not entirely happy with where he was work-wise and wanted to make some changes. And he appreciated, after a couple of years of working with it, like, clarity on the financial plan was there. He had enough, he could stop, but he was just waiting for the perfect time to make that change. And I think he realised that, and it was an interesting one, because his moment of realisation came through a family tragedy. He lost his brother. And he said, right, I've realised the commodity that I'm wasting now is time. And it was a real shame that 2 years had elapsed.
Yes.
And it took losing his brother to realise that, like, the time that he wanted with his family and creating memories and more freedom and flexibility that he couldn't get through work.
Yes.
That was that element. He was waiting for that perfect time, and that sort of really tragic event made him realise that there wasn't a perfect time. It's interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, the most successful, happy people, don't need certainty before they start something.
Yeah.
Those people who are always, I'm not quite ready, they struggle to live with uncertainty. And, I'm a great believer, put the aeroplane up in the air and add the wings afterwards. There's always a safety net, just get started, because that's the hardest thing for many people, that getting started. And you've started business, I've started businesses. We know that as soon as you start, momentum grows. Momentum grows at different speeds, but it grows. When you're just sat there, stagnation sets in. You that feeling of being stuck and frustrated and confused, just it's poisonous. It's horrible.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. There's a concept that I love called tiny experiments, right?
Yeah.
Anne-Marie Lecomte's brilliant book on this was one of my books last year. It's not a new concept. Actually, Bill Burnett wrote about it in a book called Design Your Life. And it's about trying stuff to work out where you're going. So don't expect to have the finished article. So if you wanted to improve an area of social well-being, just join a group and see if it fits. And just like and low cost, and it's different when you start a business, but because sometimes there is a cost associated with doing that. But low cost incremental experiments are just an interesting way to work out how you want to spend your time. Yeah, really interesting. What's your second question, Geoff?
So the second thing I think we often, and you're dealing with people in their 50s and 60s, or maybe 40s or whatever. So often, and I am too. This is where we have this synergy together. That's often the age group that we help the most. Often, the second question people need to ask themselves is there an event in my life that has defined who I am now, defined my identity, and is that holding me back? So, I have had people who have perhaps had a failed business, and they look at that failed business, and it's not the business has failed. They see themselves as failing, and they see themselves as this is who I am. Whatever I start next, it's going to go the same. And so the second question people need to kind of look at is there an episode of my life? Is there an event? Is there a person who was in my life?
If this is the first time you've listened to What Happens Next, welcome to the show. We are committed to making sure that we do as much as we can to help you navigate whatever's next in your life. And there's a home for What Happens Next. What Happens Next.life. We'd love for you to visit the site. On it, you will see loads of interviews, a link to take the What Happens Next quiz, an opportunity to sign up to the waiting list for the book, and much, much more. Take a look on the visit site, and we'd love to know what you think.
Who has given me this identity of it's going to be hard, it's going to be a struggle, it's going to be a failure, and reframe the event. Shall I make that more clear in that I've got this event in my life. So in my mid-20s, I was chosen to go to America, become a professional footballer, and really it was the dream of dreams. My life was going to be fantastic. 7 days before flying out there, I dislocated my right ankle, broke 3 bones in my right foot. The dream was over. It was cut. At the time, devastating. Awful. I was all. I then discovered personal growth. I picked up a book, read that book, saw all these similarities, and it led me to my passion, my purpose, what I'm meant to be doing in life. And I think this is, so bringing it back to a journaling effect, can people ask themselves the question, what was this event or person there to teach me?
Yeah.
How can I learn from this? If I were my own coach, what would I be telling myself about that event or about that person?
It's so interesting, isn't it? It's that sometimes it's that best friend question that I really like. If you were looking at your own situation, not for you, but for your best friend, what would you tell them? And often that advice is so different to what you tell yourself.
Yes.
You tell them and go, why? Do you know? It's interesting, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Why do people have a management consultant going into a business for that detached helicopter view of a business? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, why not use your journal as the detached helicopter view? You create that distance between yourself and that piece of paper.
Love
and
that.
If people will just try it, you'll be amazed at the insights you get.
Talk to me a little bit about your personal experience with that. So you went through this in your mid-20s. When you looked at that story you told yourself, and how did you go through that journey of reframing it? What did that look like for you?
What would it? So, I wasn't. I mean, I can tell you specifically kind of what happened in that. Directly after that, I had the promise of a lot of money and a dream job. It elevated my mind because I wasn't happy as a teacher. I spent 5 years. I kind of fell into teaching because I taught modern languages and I didn't know what else to do. To be quite honest, I drifted into that without any real conscious thought. After the footballing accident, I realized there was something more out there for me. I'd had the promise of a lot of money, and then I looked at, how do I earn that sort of money and that sort of life?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't going to be through teaching, and that's when I started my first business. So that's it elevated my identity of myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
I'm not sure if I've answered your question there.
As opposed to framing it as a disappointment and a inflection point, downward, whatever that looks like, you framed it as an opportunity to think in a different way. I absolutely love that.
It was life saying, that's not the life that we've got, laid out for you, but there is something better. There is something better. And, I believe we come into this world with, and we don't recognize it. We have a talent or an ability or or a passion or a love of something. We all have something, and if we can't discover ourselves, life, I do believe, keeps knocking on our heads saying, this is it, this is it, this is the path. And sometimes it does it by what seemingly appear to be adverse events.
Yeah, well, I know you've told a story, and I think you talk about it in your book, about one of your clients who found the love of music later in life. Tell that story to our audience.
It's one of my favorite stories about a client, and I'm so proud of her for what she did here, because Yvette was around about 50 years of age, and she had been a stay-at-home mum and 3 children, successful husband. He was an architect with a successful practice. And as the kids reached sort of late 20s, early 30s, they had their own lives. They'd moved out from home, and she was lost.
Yeah,
completely lost.
She's going through her own what happens next moment, right? Some middle age, thinking about the next chapter, live that chapter, and the kids are independent. She's looking at what to do.
Yeah, precisely. And whether she'd heard the noise in newspapers and media or whether it truly was in her head, she thought she was useless. She thought she'd done I'm one of those men who actually believe, motherhood, well, and fatherhood are two of the most important jobs in the whole wide world. But
Yeah,
she thought nothing of herself, thought she had no abilities, and was, when I first met her, she was literally looking at four walls. That's my life. It's more or less over.
yeah,
Okay. And so my work with her was to try and find what it is she should be doing. You couldn't do it logically just speaking with her. What are you good at? Oh, nothing. You must have something good in your life. No, no. It was all, resistance, resistance, resistance. Fast forward to where we started to make breakthroughs. She finally admitted she'd been brilliant at organizing the house. She was a great, great organizer. And the one thing in life other than her family that she loved was the rock band Status Quo. How do you put those two together? So we put those two together. She bought the Status Quo fan club. She sold Status Quo merchandise. She organized trips, travel to Europe and gigs for the fan club. There was merchandise, clothing. She wrote a book about the band. She interviewed the band. She came alive. She
yeah.
came alive. And this is it. Once you start something like that, momentum sets in, confidence grows. And then she started looking at young upcoming musicians and bands, and she started organizing events for them. And,
Amazing.
the rest
Yeah.
is history. She's a happy, fulfilled person.
It's finding where you're like. There's that Japanese concept of ikigai, isn't it?
Yes.
What does the world need? What are you good at? What can you get paid for if that's part of the plan? And looking at where those Venn diagrams come together,
Yes.
what's in the middle that you can potentially do? And
Yes.
I think actually this period of our lives, particularly if we've built up a level of financial root source, is a real opportunity to find what we love, and do more of that. So what's question 3?
So question 3 is, I believe through journaling we can create our future self. I mean, are we just going to leave our future to the winds and see what comes up, see what fate brings me, and people might have ambitions, but we have to change. If we want a bigger and better life, or a happier life, or whatever it is that person wants, something will have to change within our identity.
Yeah.
You can create that identity within your journal. You can work on that. And, I would, like everything in life, consistency of habit. And I'm not one of these people that wants to add more into people's lives. I'm a great believer in, reducing down, less.
Yeah.
But the consistency of creating your future self on a daily basis, well, it certainly helped me create myself, and who I ask myself who am I to be today? Because I want to be, most of us want to be, we want to be kind, gentle. We want to connect with people. We want to stretch ourselves. We maybe want to do one thing this week that stretches us out of our comfort zone. Think about that. Think about that on a Monday morning, and by Friday, see if you've achieved that. And if you haven't, it's fine. Journals are not about judgment, self-criticism, or blame. It's just a structured, constructive creation of you.
Yeah. Who do I want to be today is a great question. I love that, because it actually sets an intention, doesn't it? That is quite powerful. Yeah,
Yes.
I love that. I when I journal, I use gratitude to frame my day as well. So I start my journaling with 3 things that I'm most grateful for as I'm writing. Do you think gratitude fits in that journaling process? And if so, where?
It does for if you do that and it works for you. I mean, there's so much research behind the benefits of gratitude, and I'm a great believer. But many people struggle with it, and even I look. A lot of people find themselves repeating the same thing. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for my children. People get stuck in knowing what to be grateful for.
Yeah, no, I get that. I completely get it.
And they end up just on a loop saying the same old things.
Yeah. And you've got to be careful with that, haven't you? So using the journal to actually explore new ideas and think about that is really important. I really like that. I loved something you wrote on LinkedIn recently that I just want to talk about briefly. Can you tell the story of what happened to you in Barcelona? Was it Barcelona you were in recently?
It was Barcelona, yes. Okay. So again, if I tell you a little bit about my daily, I've done it this morning. So when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is I'm very lucky. I live just outside the New Forest. I'm 2 minutes and I'm in the New Forest. So I'm in there. I go for a walk, and my walk is to ensure that I feel still. Am I still in my mind? Am I still in my body? Have I got any aches or pains? I'll just shake those out or whatever. Is there a little nagging? Have I had a bad dream or a nightmare? Or is there something carried over from yesterday that's there?
Yeah.
And that walk is to give me awareness. And then I come straight back and journal and take that awareness down onto paper to rid myself of it.
Yeah.
So this has only happened over the last few years, where I've been practicing a martial art called Systema. And the whole purpose of Systema is to be still inside. If you are confronted by a 6'7", 20-stone man wanting to attack you, can you still be still inside? Okay. And I practice this, and it's you get better and better at it, but you don't really have that many tests to see how do you measure it. This is a martial art it tends to be for more mature people and people who can grasp the concepts. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was in Barcelona and pre-football match. I was at a football match, Newcastle versus Barcelona. Pre-football match, we were in a pub, we were having a few drinks, we were mixing Newcastle boys with Bar. It was great fun, great atmosphere, what these sort of trips are all around. Great exchange of stories and jokes and banter. We ended up walking up towards the ground, and as we approached the stadium, the atmosphere changed. It was the ones that were wanting their aggression, violence, blah blah blah. And I'm walking quite happily. I don't know where my crowd have gone. We're all just walking up towards it, and I was suddenly punched in the head from behind. So I punched in the side of the head there, and I looked around, and I'm not saying to big myself up, but I just smiled. I know I smiled.
Yeah.
And I saw this man sort of running away from me. And I know what I did. I just walked on. I didn't think, and I didn't think. And as I walked, a couple of the other Barcelona fans who'd seen it said, "Oh, sorry about that. Sorry that happened. We're not all like that." And people aren't all like that. But as I was walking towards the stadium, I just thought, I was grinning away because it didn't affect me.
Yeah.
It didn't affect me. Now, in my younger, it's a measure of where in my younger days, I might have chased after him, or I might have felt, why me? Why has this happened to me? And feel ashamed. And what was I giving off that this happened? But it just didn't affect me, and it was a wonderful thing to happen because it showed my sense of feeling still.
Well, I think it's so interesting because when I read that, and we've alluded to it already. We spoke earlier about some of those universal truths, and I actually think that often when we're thinking about some of these universal truths, you can come at them from completely different angles. So I read that and thought about my belief in a lot of the Stoic philosophy principles, in particular, the element that talks about focusing on what you can control.
Yeah.
And also how meditation can help you do that as part of the practice. Do you reckon like sort of one of the keys to managing change successfully is focusing on what you can control, regardless of whether you come from it from the martial arts angle or the philosophy angle? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and you mentioned meditate. I equate journaling. I've meditated and meditate, and I advocate that. But a lot of people, a lot of my clients, I just can't do it. I just can't, and there's a real resistance to it, and that's why I promote journaling, because I feel the two practices are the same in many respects. It's removal of the noise up there. In meditation, it's clearing the mind and perhaps returning to the breath.
Yeah.
In journaling, it's removal of what's in there and detaching from it on paper. I totally agree with you. Control what we're able to control, and the rest just leave it be as to what it is. Coming back to journaling, journaling is a form of controlling your thoughts.
Yeah.
Your thoughts in there are quite often, they're just on a loop.
Yeah,
you might say, that problem or that person at work who's bugging me, I'm not going to think about them anymore. And then you see them the next day and it's there again, and when it's kept up there, it's just on a loop. Putting it down on paper, trying to, writing about that situation or that person, trying to understand it more. You'll be surprised.
Examining the stories you're telling yourself about that particular.
Yeah. You'll be surprised at the insights you get when you take it out of your mind and onto paper. And I use this phrase of, I am complete and done with this situation. I am complete. When you can send that message to yourself via journaling or via whatever method works for you, you stop it. You stop being a martyr. You stop being a victim. You start being a victim to your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then you start taking control, right?
And you move on from it. Yeah.
Love that. Tell me a little bit about, because I know your family is really important to you, and we've spoken about family quite a lot. I can't believe you've made your grandkids support Newcastle, though, Geoff. That's a step too far, mate. I mean, the problem is, as a West Ham fan, I've got nothing to talk about, particularly at the minute. So I can't really. But talk to me about those insights you get from your family, and what you've learned about the work you do from your connection to your family. Tell me a little bit about that.
And first of all, being born in Newcastle cut me open. I've got black and white blood. It's so it's just a family tradition. It has to be done. But again, coming back to this thought of stillness and being still. I've got a granddaughter. So I've got a granddaughter who's just coming up to 2 years of age. Anybody who sees children of that sort of age, they come into this world perfect. Yeah. She wakes up in the morning with no expectations of what the day is bringing her, accepts the day as the day unravels, Doesn't judge people or judge things. The only things you might judge is food. If she doesn't like a taste, she'll throw it out, and if she likes it, she'll and she doesn't have to do anything to walk in a room and light it up.
Yeah, it really interesting.
You and I and every other adult, we are those people, aren't we?
Yeah.
Aren't we? Where did we lose that? Where did we lose walking into a room and just being ourselves, not having to impress anybody, say anything special or do anything? Where do we just shine our light?
Well, but here's the other interesting thing, and I think it's really relevant when we're thinking about the next chapter of our lives. Kids play, right? And we lose the ability to look at life in a way where we can just go, why? If I'm looking at the next chapter of my life, if I ignore all these, and again, some of the things that hold us back is this identity piece where play becomes a bit of a thing. Well, I'm too grown up to play.
Yeah.
I think there's real value in encouraging people in their own way to play a bit more, and I think we lose that as we get older. What do you think?
Absolutely. And, I in a way, in business, excluding my coaching, I had a digital print business and a property business. I was far too serious about my digital print business. It was my identity. I worked too damn hard in it. I attached to it. It was my self-worth. It's I used to go around the machines every Christmas Eve. I used to let all the staff and everybody else leave the place. I almost used to pat them on their head as my little children. It was too all enveloping. When I went into property, I played with it. I love my tenants. I would spend time with my tenants. I have a lot of Nepalese ex-Gurkhas who attend. They would invite me in for a drink and a bit of a feast. Property has been play to me, whereas digital print, oh my goodness, it was serious business. And I totally get with you. We need to stop do what you need to do, but stop getting too serious about these things. And we should play in business.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. Like I one of the things that I often talk to clients about is that, we take the trust that clients place in us to look after their wealth really seriously, but we're not going to have a relationship that's not going to be a lot of fun along the way. And those things are completely separate, and we're going to enjoy the dynamic. And actually thinking about money as a tool to live the life you want, not just a scorecard where you accumulate more, often is a really useful reframing for people to think about their next chapter. You can define the game that you're playing effectively in a way that you want it. Yeah. So you've learned a lot. You've learned a lot from having grandkids. Do you think?
Oh, I would love to be the patriarch of the family, the wise grandfather, giving out advice to. It's the other way around. I watch them and see how they deal with things, and I'm in awe. And I sometimes think we really do need to look at how serious we've made our lives as adults, how much we've made it hard work, and go back to that carefree attitude of accepting what life is.
Yeah, I love that. One thing that sort of I was thinking about as you said that, Geoff, was that element of continued learning, and that attitude of, look, I'm not a wise old sage. You're not that old, to be honest. Wise old, get rid of old. Wise sage. But actually, I'm just a student of life. how important do you think that mindset is when we're thinking about the next chapter?
Yeah, I think it's so important. And yet again, you see, some of the clients that come to me, they add tension to that. They add tension and pressure on themselves to learn what they need to learn. And if you can embrace this learning with a much, again, I come back to a calm mind, a stillness of, um, you know, and also an acceptance of life will bring us the lessons that we need to learn quite often. I coached a guy, a very serious guy, an achiever, somebody who really wanted to achieve in life in his late 20s, early 30s. And he said, "Do you know what? I've read the autobiographies and biographies of great people, people who've achieved things, and they had some hard times in their life. So I'm going to look for hard, tough situations, put myself in these tough situations so that I become wiser quicker." And I thought, man, don't go looking for trouble. The universe does not want us to go looking for difficult times and hard circumstances. It will, I have this faith, and everyone has their own beliefs, and whether it be the universe, whether it be God, whether it be a religious God or a spiritual God, each to their own. It doesn't matter what it is, but I believe we should have that thing that is bigger than us, and trust it, and trust that it will bring us what we need to learn.
The Greeks had a great way of looking at this, because they used to, and there was a guy a couple of years ago now a guy called John Dunkley, who we interviewed on What Happens Next, probably about 18 months ago. And he talked about this Greek philosophy that used to talk about areas of well-being, because often when we think about the conventional way that retirement looks for a lot of people, the only thing that where the focus is that hedonistic well-being, just doing stuff we love. And I believe that there's a real argument in saying, actually, you need not only do you need that hedonic well-being, just spending more time doing stuff you love, but you also need what the Greeks used to call eudaimonic well-being. Purpose, meaning, striving for something, working for something that's important to you. That's not necessarily a financial thing. That's the thing that matters to you. Being of value in some way, that eudaimonic well-being. But interestingly, when I spoke to John, he talked about this concept of cheronic well-being that I hadn't heard of. And cheronic well-being is what gives you awe. What do you look at that's bigger than you, that effectively gives you a sense of perspective? Because that perspective is really important. And actually, I'm not religious, but I experience awe in nature. Like you talked about walking in the forest and being in that environment where you go, this is incredible. But also, John talked about that. He got awe from being in a field in a music festival and sharing an experience with 40,000 people. That's what gave him awe. I spoke to my daughter, Sophie, who was obsessed last week with the rocket that went around the moon, the astronauts that went around the moon. Knowing that can exist and seeing that journey is all inspiring as well. But I do think we need that in our lives. As you say, some people it's spiritual, some people it's religious, some people it's not. But cheronic well-being, feeling a sense of awe, is an important part of the puzzle, I think.
Yes. And, as you were saying those words, I was trying to think, okay, where are my feelings from awe coming from? And the sort of insight I've had over the last year or so, I think my awe comes from connection. You and I are both, part of a group, a community. There's a very loving, caring community. You may laugh at my connection to Newcastle United, but there's a real community there. And there's wonderful, I took my grandsons there. The number of people who high-fived them and smiled at them and saw the younger generation coming through was wonderful.
Well, and here's the interesting thing. I'm really fond of Newcastle. I actually really love Newcastle, and the reason I love Newcastle so much is because I've done the Great North Run a couple of times.
Oh, right, yeah.
And every single time the people of Newcastle have come out, and there's a bit in the Great North Run where you're sort of think you're nearly finished, and then you go down a hill. And I can't remember the name of the beach. I want to say South Shield, something like that. But there's a beach you run down,
right.
And there's a bit of the estate that you run through where everybody's giving out jelly babies and cheering you on and saying you've not got long to go. And the fact that people come out and do that, I love. Do you know what I mean? It's that community. It's really, really important. And we talk, funny enough, I've written in the What Happens Next book about how important not only social well-being is, but also feeling part of something bigger. And that's what community is, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
The challenge of people often face when they're thinking about the next chapter of their lives is change often is bloody hard. How do we navigate change, and how do we think about the barriers that might be holding us back to the next chapter of our lives?
Well, I'll describe one of the analogies I use with clients, because quite often people will have a goal. They'll have a goal of where they want to get to, but they're not starting. They're not starting because that goal seems so distant. It seems, oh gosh, I'm going to have to do so much to get to that place. And I use the analogy of, say you and I are where we are in the south of England, and we're going to travel at night, for want of a better place. See, we're talking about Newcastle at the moment.
Going to Newcastle.
We're going up to the Great North Run, yeah. And we're traveling at night. So we set off from London or wherever. We've got the headlights on. We can't see Newcastle. We can't see how far away it is. We can only see as far as the headlights. And we just have to follow the headlights.
Yeah.
So when I'm working with people, I have to bring them back to, don't look at the massive transformation. Don't look at the massive change. And when I say massive, it's massive in people's heads. It's not really that massive. It's, if you break it down, just look at the headlights in front of you. Just look at the next thing. Often it's the starting point. People haven't started. Just start it.
Yeah.
Then the next step. Then the next step. Yeah. Small steps. There's a number of books out there that we've probably all read of, small steps, do one thing. That's why I say I'm people's reminder, because when I say something like, I read that book on, just doing one thing, and I read that book on small steps, tiny steps or whatever. We all know these things, but we're not implementing it. And I just have to remind them.
Yeah.
Change isn't that massive.
Yeah. What about, there's a really interesting element of that came to mind when I'm thinking about plans we build for clients. And I always use the phrase when we think about plans, which are start with the end in mind. Here's our goal. How do we get there? I always remind people that plans are great because it allows you to think about the future you want to achieve.
Yes.
I always quote the often underrated philosopher, Mr. Mike Tyson: plans are great until you get punched in the face, because actually plans often go wrong. That stuff happens out of our control that derails our plans. From your perspective, when you're thinking about having a goal in mind and taking incremental action, how do we navigate the fact that often it's never a straight line and we've got to sometimes evolve the plan, change the plan? How can we think about that differently from a coaching perspective?
And the first thing to do is know you will get punched in the face.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah.
You will. And too many people think that when they look at successful people or the people that they wish to emulate, they think, oh, it must have been this straight line for them. It never has. I categorically, having mixed and met a lot of people in my life, it never was this smooth sailing straight line. So why are there challenges? Why do you get punched in the head? I think sometimes people need to have an understanding of why. Why did that happen? I think sometimes it's to test your resolve, test you. Is this really what I want to do? Can I take this difficulty as well as the smooth parts?
Yeah.
Because life is yin and yang, yet life is dark and light. There's going to be part of that. The Buddhists will say life is suffering. There's bound to be some suffering along the path. So that's one of the things. But the other thing is, life isn't just necessarily about reaching that outcome. Life is about who you become within the process.
Yeah, interesting.
And those tough bits, when you reach the other side of them,
you learn a lot about you, right?
You don't just learn a lot about you. You feel great.
Yeah.
You feel empowered. You go to another level of confidence because you went, do you know what? I got that punch in the head. And here I am. I'm the other side of that, and things are going well now. And then another punch in the head will come. But you empower yourself. You start to do you know what? I can do things. I can do this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you don't go looking for it like your man earlier, I think you're okay. I mean, it is interesting because I think a lot about resilience in that context, and I'm never looking for bad things to happen. I'm never looking for hard times to happen. But I do think there's some value in thinking about what challenge you can adapt. So to give you an example, I said to my wife only a few weeks ago that I've never particularly enjoyed running. And I've done 3 marathons, right, Geoff? So, and I think looking back in retrospect, part of the decision to do it, and don't get me wrong, I love the days, because the days of going to Newcastle and doing the Great North Run or doing the London Marathon, and I did Paris as well. But I love the days. The training for it was brutal, but I think there was an element of me who wanted to prove to myself that I could do it.
Yes.
And I think I'm probably a little more resilient now, having done it and proven to myself that I could. I'm more resilient now than I was before. Do you think there's value in, and I think there's a balance, right? Because if I'm not seeking bad things to happen, do you think there's a value in setting yourself challenges to boost that self-confidence and resilience? And if so, how do we do it?
And I think there's a great belief that the reason that there's so many mental health issues in the world at the moment is that we are too comfortable. We don't embrace discomfort.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you may have come across Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's a
Yeah.
sort of, he has all these, he's a scientist and has biohacking ideas for longevity, good health, fitness, etc., etc. And I can't remember the name of it. There's the part in the human brain, but there's a part in the human brain that shrinks if we have just this very comfortable. We only ever do the things that please us. So, if there's a plate of those sweet donuts and fizzy drink and a fizzy drink, they're comfortable and we can watch a box set on TV and just live a life of comfort. And this part of our brain shrinks when we have the cold water douse or the cold shower. We go out and we do our 5-mile run, our training run in the pouring wet rain, and this part of our brain grows.
Interesting.
And what does that growth within the brain give us? It gives us resilience. And so, his philosophy will be we should be embracing more discomfort, doing the things that we don't necessarily like to do, but will grow us.
Yeah, interesting.
As almost like a structured framework.
Yeah, love that. And it goes back to what you spoke about before. Hedonism, doing stuff we love to do is really important. But doing stuff that challenges us, that grows us, that helps us do that is fundamental too. Geoff, I'm really curious because I love a good story, and I always like to understand the stories that define somebody's work. So what story describes the work you do best?
My job is to empower people, and I've been told I'm quite good at it. Okay, so that's.
I'd agree, by the way.
And there's a defining story where I had this light bulb moment of knowing I could do this, and it comes back to discomfort, and it comes back to life bringing us lessons. And I write about this in my book. Things come in threes. And in February 2008, my father died, and I was very, very close to my father. I was trying to buy my business partner out of my digital print business. I had to find £500,000, and nobody was lending me the money extra to pay him to buy him out of the business. And I had an armed gunman in one of my HMO properties. Three things. In the book, I go into detail about those three things, and we'll probably ask any questions you want to ask about them. But I won't go into the full detail. But I had 3 loud knocks on the head, 3 punches on the side of the head, saying, "How are you going to deal with this, Geoff?" And the old Geoff would have probably sat in a corner and sucked my thumb and gone, "Help, mommy, come and help me." It's but I dealt with them. Now, I dealt with all 3. What did that do for? That empowered me. I believed in myself more. I grew in confidence more. I felt this power that I believe we all have. This is nothing special to me. This is human empowerment that I believe we should all look for, tap into, and express. And that's the story that really put me on a different trajectory.
Love that. I've loved today, mate. As always, it's been a really interesting conversation, and we've covered a lot of ground, and we've overran.
I've got no concept of time.
That's always a good sign. Where can people, if they want to find out about the amazing work you do, find out a bit more about you?
I mean, they can look at my website, which is literally my name, geoffsober.com. My email is jeff@geoffsober.com. And yeah, I'm happy to just have conversations with people. Let me hear where you're needing help in life.
Love that. Thank you so much. And I hope that you've enjoyed this as much as I have. Thank you, Geoff. And
it's always a pleasure, Chris. I love talking to you.
Lovely. Thanks, mate.
Part of the issue we've got when we're thinking about what happens next in our lives is having the self-awareness, having the introspection to be able to think about what the gaps in our well-being are. And we're doing loads of work at the minute with what happens next to build solutions that are going to help you think about well-being in a nuanced way when you're thinking about how it applies to your life. One of the first things we've built that you can use today is our What Happens Next quiz. It's free to do, takes about 5 minutes, but what it will do is give you an insight into the areas of strengths when it comes to your well-being and the areas you might want to improve. You can take the What Happens Next quiz at whathappensnext.life/quiz, and I hope it helps you in your journey to work out what happens next for you.